Hey, and welcome to Hard Hat Guitar. Today we're going to be playing some simple licks using thirds. And the thing I like about thirds is you can use them all over the place. You can use them in classic rock sounding songs, country rock, Americana, soul sounding songs, you name it, easy rock songs, alternative rock songs. They're very handy and they're really cool to like mix in between singing verses. You can tag them into your guitar solos. They're really, really versatile, cool things. And there's thirds all over the guitar. We could spend forever finding them all, and you never would still. But we're going to focus on a simple way to find a couple using bar chords based on our low E string. So if I have my E shape, I'm going to use that bar chord. And we're going to start in the key of G. So that would mean I'd be playing a full E-shaped bar chord on my 3rd fret. And my thirds, I'm going to play them first and then I'll talk you through them. So my thirds are going to sound like this. And I suppose you've heard Brown-Eyed Girl, everybody has. Well, first of all, this is not a Brown-Eyed Girl lesson. Please stay here. But that is a simple way of using thirds that you would know, but the reason I want to base it off these bar chords is we're going to take our G string and our E string, our high E string, of this chord and just focus on those two notes. So what I'm doing is I'm playing the G of the G chord and the B, which is my third, of my G chord. So just pick two notes out of them. Now I'm going to slide up and I'm going to be playing the same two strings. We're going to stay on these same two strings, but now I'm on the 5th fret with both my G string and my high E string. And then I'm going to go up to my 7th fret. So the Brown-Eyed Girl lick basically does that and goes back down. Now, if you know the song, and we'll apply this to a different chord, the next chord of Brown-Eyed Girl is C in that intro. I can do the same thing. I can find my G and my high E string, and I'm playing that part of the chord, the C and the E. So I've done the same exact thing, only with a different shape. So here's my G, my C. So, like I said, this is not a Brown-Eyed Girl lesson, so we're going to take a look at how to use that in other songs. And what I like to do is, I don't ever do this. I like to use pieces of those thirds. And the reason we're basing them around these bar chords is you can use these without necessarily knowing that you're playing thirds. Like if you're playing this over a B chord, well, a lot of you might not know the notes of a B major scale. It doesn't matter. You can still use that lick if you know where your B bar chord is. So we're going to use these in a couple examples and see how they work for you. Okay, so for our first example, I'm going to keep it real simple and we're just going to follow the chord wherever it goes. So I'm going to just do a very simple chord progression of G to C. Just that back and forth a couple times. And when we're playing our G, we're going to mess with this one. And our C, here's our bar chord. So we're going to stick with playing those notes directly over those chords. We'll mix it up a little bit in a few minutes, but for now, we're going to stick with the very basics of it. Okay, and one other thing, I'm not just like playing these two notes, I'm kind of sliding up. I think that sounds better. So I'm sliding my my G string, and from 2 frets behind usually. And then I'm picking, or it's up to you. You could pick your high E string, kind of like this. If you can watch my picking hand. Or what I usually do is I use the pick for my G string, then use my middle finger to get that high E. You can do whatever you want. It's either way, it's probably better than trying to block the string. I mean, you can. Whatever works for you, but I prefer picking in my finger for that. So anyway, let's try this easy example, and then we'll do one kind of over a loop. Okay, bad edit job coming. Okay, and we're back. As you can see, what I did there is I kept it really simple and just followed the chord, except for at the very end, and this kind of leads to my next point, is I kind of ended my little lick on the part of the G chord. Even though the rhythm guitar had switched to a C, and it still worked. And this kind of leads to my next point. What if you're playing a song where, the chord changes a little faster, Something like that. You're not going to run around, chasing your chords around. It's kind of not a good use of your time, and it doesn't really sound very good. It sounds very forced and soulless. So in a situation like that, you can... Right there I'm playing G, E minor, C, D, which keeps me in the key of G. I can play with my G thirds over all those chords because I'm not leaving the key of G, so they all fit. So I'm going to show you an example of that. I'm going to play that same chord progression. But this time I'm going to stick to just using my G thirds. So we'll see what that sounds like. So as you can see, that works and it sounds cool. But you can probably also see that if you just did that, it would probably get old after a while. In fact, sooner rather than later. What I like to do with thirds is to mix them in with other things. And we could do a 2-hour video of ways to do that. But I'm going to do one example, and I'm going to add it to a couple of licks I like to mix in with the thirds. One is, they're both kind of double stop licks. The first one, and we're going to stick to our bar chords so you can use them in any key. So now here's my G bar chord again. But instead of playing my G string and my high E string, I'm going to play my B string and my high E string. So I'm going to get these two notes, the top two notes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that with one finger. Then I'm going to hammer on my B string with my ring fingers on the 5th fret, so it's going to sound like this. And even go back. That's a cool lick. You can do that in any key. It's kind of an old, like, Buffalo Springfield Lovin' Spoonful lick. But it goes good with the thirds. And then I'm going to add one more, again, based on this chord. Trying to keep things uniform. And I'm going to now focus on my G string and my B string. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hammer on to the third. So I'm going to bar on my 3rd fret and hammer on from the 3rd fret to the 4th fret on my G string. It's a very bluesy thing to do. And then I'm going to resolve it by landing on the G on my D string on the 5th fret. So if I did those licks together, and I'm going to mix them in with my thirds. And we're going to do that over the same chord progression we just did. So we'll see how it sounds mixed in, like integrated with other techniques than just straight thirds. So let's try that out. So one thing I did there that I didn't say I was going to do, but it's kind of a cool, fun thing, is instead of just using those 3 groups of thirds, what I did was between the 7th fret thirds and the 5th fret ones, I found the passing tones in between on the 6th fret. That's a cool, very country thing to do. I like it. So that's a fun thing to mess around with as well. And another thing too is, over that I felt like a little bit like I was overplaying. These also sound really good in small chunks, like between the verses of singing. Like if you have a singer and they're doing their melody, just those little quick fills you can throw in between verses that sound, or lines of a verse even. That's going to sound really cool. So, that what I did just then sounded like more of a solo, and there are some cool ideas you can steal from there. But remember, this is also like the idea of being a good bandmate and what you can do, to complement a singer without, stomping on them necessarily. And these thirds work great, like in between lines, when there's a little bit of space and you don't want to, conquer that space, but you want to fill it in. So try these thirds out and try them out with, your bandmates and see how they sound. So I hope that's helpful. The thing I like about this little trick is you don't necessarily have to have the fretboard mastered to start using them. As long as you have that bar chord shape, then you have your 3 notes. Obviously, down the road, it's helpful to know as much of the fretboard as possible, but this is a cool sounding thing that you can use while you're still learning that. And remember, these tricks do sound cool in a solo, but I think they work best when, playing on a song like between verses or between lines of a verse. Like, they're little fill-in tricks you can do. So take a look at your set list, see if there's a couple songs that you can fit these in, and as always, put on your hard hat and get playing. Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye.